All right, welcome to another episode of Growth Marketers Podcast. I am Solomon Timothy.
And I am Taylor Rowe. Today's episode is titled Why You Should Never Outsource Your Content. And we went into basically why we believe that, which again, coming from a marketing agency, full disclosure, we believe that you probably shouldn't outsource your content, even if you're outsourcing it to us. I think there's a lot of things about your marketing campaign, marketing strategy that you can, and probably depending on the size of your organization, probably should outsource. The content in that expert level knowledge or expertise is something that I don't think you should ever outsource. And so in this episode, we dove into why you shouldn't outsource and then how to overcome that hurdle of, okay, if we're now required to manage all of this content creation internally, can we be successful marketers? How do we actually market it? And so we talked about a lot of tips and tricks in order to go about creating content and then of course maximizing that content. So as always, if you enjoyed the episode, hit like, subscribe, share it with your network, and of course comment if you have any questions or just to let us know that you thought it was valuable. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, Taylor, so we're back in the studio. Yeah, another episode. Super excited. Today's topic is really, really out there. I'm going to be honest. This is called Why You Should Never Outsource Your Content. I know most people are probably thinking, well, I need to find somebody to do my content because I don't have the bandwidth, the resources. Content is what's holding me up. Today, we're going to talk about why you should never outsource your content.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
It is. It is crazy, especially for an agency like us who.
That's right.
We do, full disclosure, we do write content.
Thousands and thousands of words a day.
For our clients, a lot of our clients. But the idea, marketing has changed, digital marketing has changed, and the way that we approach marketing and our philosophy has also changed because, like I said, marketing has changed. We need to adapt. And so if we look at it, unless your industry, like there's no competition, right? Which probably nobody listening to this has no competition or they wouldn't be trying to learn about marketing. But
right.
There's so much content out there, whether that's blog posts or video content or podcasts or whatever it may be, that average content is just going to be exactly that, average. Like you're never going to rank number one on Google with average content. You're never going to have
recycle content,
1 million subscribers with average content. And when you outsource all of your content creation, that's majority of the time, that's exactly what you're going to get. Because for one, you're the only one that knows about your products the way that you know about it. And the only one that knows about your customers the way that you know about it. So if you think about it in theory, if I know my products and my customers the best, even if I do a great job of explaining that to you, you do a great job researching it, and then you write a blog post about what I try to explain to you, you're going to lose something, right?
Because I don't know.
If you capture 90% of it, you're losing that 10%, and that 10% might be what takes you over the edge. So in my opinion, I don't think you should ever outsource your content because look at what you're outsourcing, right? So let's say you hired, just use the example of SEO, right? So you hire an SEO agency and they're going to write all the content for you. So now they need to be an expert in every industry that all of their clients are writing, that they're writing content for, so they can write that range of content.
They need an engineer, a doctor, a roofer.
Right. Then they need to also be an expert in SEO.
Yeah.
They need an expert in website development, and all their clients are probably on different websites, WordPress and HubSpot and whatever it may be, Joomla, Squarespace. There could be anything. So they need to be expert in all of that. Then they also need to be basically a PR team to outreach and find opportunities for guest posting or backlinks or whatever that may be. So there's so many things. And on top of that, they need to know your customers and they need to know your industry. Like you said, they need to be, if you're a doctor, as you mentioned, they need to have PhD level knowledge on something to write about it.
Or if you're an attorney, you got to have all this laws and knowledge about everything.
They're never going to capture that. So they're going to spend way too much time researching about the topic and then creating subpar content versus
from other subpar content creators.
Right. So what you need to do, rather than outsource your content, you can outsource some of it, right? You can find a partner who can help you facilitate the content creation and production process, so that all you have to do is create that piece of content, right? So if it's a video, like you should just show up and record the video because you know everything that they're talking about. They've already done the research. They've already given you the topics, the questions. They're going to edit the video. They're going to promote the video, chop it up into different pieces. Then they're going to transcribe the video. So like that part of it, you can outsource, but the actual
you're not going to be
creation, the transfer of knowledge needs to come from the subject matter expert. But no matter who you hire, they're not going to be a subject matter expert to your level, or they would be doing your job. Right? Like if you're the CEO of a company and you think that someone else that is a content writer at another company is going to know as much as you know as the CEO, then they probably wouldn't be a content writer at that company. They would be the CEO of
another company.
So just looking at it that way, there's things you can outsource. There's things you can't. You should outsource the things that you're not an expert at. You're not an expert at website development. You're not an expert at video production. You're not an expert at Google Ads. You're not an expert at
podcast production.
You might not be an expert at podcast production. What you are an expert as is your business. So don't outsource
what your clients are paying you for.
Yeah. That knowledge you can't outsource. So I guess just to circle back, I was like, why you should never outsource is because one, you need to, as marketers, our job is to, and really the brands that are winning today are the ones that are focusing on becoming a knowledge center for their ideal customer, becoming a resource center, becoming that they're turning their website, their digital channels, YouTube, social media into that go-to place to learn more about X, Y, or Z industry. So in order to do that, there's a lot of work on coordination, research, development, looking at search trends, search volumes, looking at competition, editing, and promoting, all those kind of things. There's a lot of work around that. There's also a lot of work in actually creating that content. So that's the piece that I think you should not outsource, at least fully outsource, because that is that expertise that's going to differentiate your website versus your competitor, is that you have a much deeper understanding, much deeper knowledge. So even if you're creating less content, create more valuable content, which is going to come from that person, that subject matter expert internally. Even if you have to hire that person internally because they're going to sit next to you and they're going to learn about your company, about your objectives, about your industry, learn directly from you rather than completely outsourcing it. So that would be my recommendation on like outsourcing content or not outsourcing content. If you want to stand out, if you want to be a subject matter expert, then don't outsource it.
I like the idea of, voice memo. Like I have a little piece of content I want to create, but I'm not going to have the time to write it, but I'm going to tell exactly what I'm trying to convey to my writer who writes for me all day. Yeah. And that's a easy way to do it because now this person doesn't have to research and go find Wikipedia. I mean, you read articles, it looks like it's copied right out of Wikipedia because that's what it is. Yeah. They don't know what they're writing about.
I'm glad you said that because
that's scaling.
You could say that's outsourcing because it's not. But in my opinion, you're, again, going back to outsource the things that you're not an expert at.
Right.
You might be a terrible writer, but you have the knowledge in your head.
Correct.
So don't outsource the information gathering piece.
Right.
Give that information to the copywriter. Let them format that in a way. There's a difference between transcribing and organizing your thoughts,
correct,
versus them just trying to research and figure it out on their own, coming back to you and then saying, well, it's good enough. Let's just ship it, right? That's not what we want to do. So if you're not a good copywriter or you don't have the time, still don't fully outsource it. What you need to do is outsource someone who's going to plan, facilitate, strategize, come to you and say, hey, I'm going to make it as easy as possible. I did my research. Here's 10 questions I want to ask you. Let's record this conversation and just, you spill your thoughts out, right? So you may not be great at even organizing your thoughts. You may not be great at writing, may not have the time, but make time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, a week, a month, whatever you can, and double down on valuable content versus just outsource the whole thing. Don't pay attention to it.
I love it. So that's one of my hacks is voice memo and recording. All the apps have like voice, like you can record a 1 minute recording and just push send on Skype or whatever tools you use. Super easy. Loom, it's another one. We use that. I don't know why I'm giving tools away on this, but it's kind of ways to scale yourself without outsourcing and hoping for the best. And then they may not come back with what you like. And then you're kind of like disappointed. So that's one way. And what I also do in video is we do batch recording. You're familiar with this. So we set apart a time. We have 10 things that we're going to cover. So again, somebody who wants to create content and you want to create quality content. Because in my videos, I'm the video guy.
Yeah.
You can't outsource me. So you need me.
Right.
but I don't have time. So you have to get me for an hour or two, and I'm doing 20 things in that 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it looks like I'm making videos every day. I'm not.
Right.
So something similar to what we do in the podcast is to find a rhythm to create the content of quality and what your customers are looking for. So for me, what I'm interested in finding out what are their questions, because my marketing company will never find out what customers are asking me.
Yeah.
Right. Think about it. If I was that roofing guy, we use a lot of roofing examples in our podcast. So all of you roofers out there, please pay attention. So if I'm a roofing guy, the questions that I'm getting is not in Google.
Yeah.
Can't find the question.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to take those questions, create them into content pieces, and then literally have somebody execute for you because you're busy doing roofs and you're on top of people's houses or commercial buildings. You don't have time to post things. Right. Somebody can do the posting while the ideas derive from you as a company.
Right.
Is that what we're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the core of all of this is a subject matter expert, right? At every organization,
SME.
There's an SME, right? And
right.
so a lot of times could be on the production. I mean, depends on what kind of industry you're in. A lot of times, actually, like the example you said, it's your salespeople, your senior level salespeople, because they've heard every question, every objection. They've had to take the questions from the clients, go back to, the fulfillment or, tech department or the CEO or whoever engineers, find the answers, find the solutions, go back to the customers, explain, kind of bridge that gap. So over time, I mean, if you're constantly having these conversations and educating your prospects, you're going to become a subject matter expert, right? No matter whatever you're selling. So the idea that then you can take that and then just outsource that critical piece of it, like you said, the questions, the knowledge, the interactions, the product knowledge. It doesn't even have to be about your product. It could just be about your customers. Like you said, what are the top 5 questions that you get? You go and ask every salesperson, they can rattle off probably 50 questions. Mm-hmm. If you just outsource your content completely to a marketing team,
they'll never have any idea.
How are they going to figure that out, right?
I love it.
So that's a piece that I wouldn't outsource. And so the common objections to this, right, is like, well, I don't have the time. I don't have the knowledge of like how to create it or what to create. I'm not a good writer, or I just want to, I don't want to deal with it, right? So if you're in that boat of like, I just don't want to deal with it, then you probably don't see the value of what we're talking about, right? So you're not quite there yet, because if you don't see it valuable, then like you shouldn't be investing.
Or don't create any content.
Yeah, exactly. Then why are you creating content? Like, why do you want to do something just like a little bit? Like why? Like, well, I know we should be doing something, so I'm just going to spend money even though it's not giving me value.
Right.
You can't completely outsource your content. What I would do, if you look at a business that's growing, that's trying to hire an agency or thinking about outsourcing their content, that would probably be the first thing that I would hire internally. Or building a marketing department, aside from the CMO, director of marketing, VP, whatever you want to call it, I would hire content writers, so like actual copy for blog, and I would hire video production. It could be the same person. Maybe someone happens to know how to record and edit videos and how to write content really well. If you can do that, great. If not, those are 2 people. And then their job is document the subject matter experts. So that's the CEO, that's department heads, that's salespeople. If they can go and they can take that information, take that knowledge, put it on the paper, put it into videos, then the part that you can outsource is the expertise of how to distribute that content,
right,
how to measure that content, how to maximize the impact of that content. That's where you're going to get an expert. But when you try to put everything all into one, you're going to find somebody or a contractor, a freelancer, a company, an agency that is like a jack of all trades, master of none situation. It's just too much. And it's like, you can be an expert in all those things and an expert in your industry. It's not going to happen. So focus on creating a system. I think you mentioned even with the batch,
right,
the
recording.
Batch content is like, you're creating a system that you can succeed in,
right,
of extracting that information, that knowledge from your subject matter experts, and then turn that into something of marketing value. So that's the piece that you can outsource, figure out how to do that. But you need to build a system, whether that's internally or just take that responsibility yourself. If you're listening to this if you are the subject matter expert, there is a time commitment. Like, you have to buy into this idea that if I spend my time creating valuable content, it's actually going to scale my time more in the future, because I don't have to have these conversations on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah,
I can have 10,000 people watch this video rather than explain it one
10,000
person at a time 10,000 times.
And I also like how you talked about the salespeople having every single question. I think it's the most untapped place of questions. So a couple of things that I've been seeing is, one, create content with your salespeople because they just figured out the answer. They can easily talk about it. And they're the face of the company.
They have the information. They love to talk about it.
Yeah.
No one ever asks them their questions except the customers, right? And so they feel like, okay, especially if you have if you're in a position where you have outside sales reps,
right?
They're on the road, they're meeting with customers all day. No one from the company, rarely do they come back to the sales rep and say, hey, we want your opinion on this, right?
Right.
Like, what if you go to your sales rep and say, hey, each sales rep, so we have 10 sales reps, once a month, we're going to sit down and make a half-hour video with each one, and we're going to ask them questions about this, whatever topic. Now, all of a sudden, you have 10 pieces of top content per month, raw pieces of content that, like you said, could be batched. So maybe it's 5 pieces of content per session. Maybe it can be broken down into multiple different formats. It could be transcribed. I mean, there's so much content that can be created. That's a piece you can outsource. I wouldn't say, hey, have your salespeople write your blogs for you.
No.
Salespeople shouldn't be writing any content, but they have the knowledge, right?
Yeah. So the other piece of that too is for the team, whether it's internal, external, whatever, is to listen to the sales calls that they're having and to extract the questions from the sales calls.
Yeah.
So we've had customers do that. So it's like a Zoom call or whatever. Inside it, you can transcribe it. We have so many tools, that AI transcription kind of thing, that can literally tell you what questions the customers are asking. If you didn't have anybody, right? If you didn't even have the salespeople to tell you what questions, because they may or may not know, you can use technology to scale that.
Yeah,
for,
and I would
for less than $100.
And I would take that and then repose that question back to the salespeople, because like
make them video record you.
What you're saying is maybe they're not even identifying it. So you go to salespeople, it's like, well, how should I know? Because they're trying to think I don't know how to market to these people. I'm not a marketer. I'm a salesperson. So in that scenario, you can listen to those calls. You can even through AI identify what those questions were, what those pain points are, highlight those, look at them logically, maybe do a couple Google searches just to kind of see what's information. You spend, as whoever you are, the marketer or the outsourced company, spend that 20 minutes packaging that up, go back to the sales person and then outline that question and then get their answers, because they might not have even identified that those were pain points. But in most cases, I think they will. But it's a great point of take that information, extract it, repackage it, and then get it ready to ask those questions.
So we talked about creating all this content without having to outsource it. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And most people think that I just need to find somebody else to outsource.
Right.
So I don't have to do any of it. I'm not going to talk to them. They're going to figure it out. They're just going to magically create amazing content that's just going to convert.
So the reason is, it's a time-consuming
exercise
that we're asking people to do. And at the same time, what people think they're doing, what companies think they're doing is exactly what I said, is hey, I'm not an expert in this, so I'm going to outsource it. So you put yourself in the scenario of, a company, manufacturing company. We don't have a marketing department, or we have one person who's the head of sales and marketing. They're responsible for everything. It's hey, we don't have the time or the knowledge and expertise to do this. So I'm going to outsource the whole thing. What they're missing is, because they know the content is a critical piece of that. Because no matter what kind of marketing campaign you're running,
you need
paid
content.
Campaign, organic campaign, social media.
Agreed.
You need content in some format.
Content is king.
Yeah, it is, right? That's why that saying exists, content is king, is that content is the centerpiece of all of this, machine that's moving around, right? It is that linchpin. So you think, okay, well, I'm not an expert in this machine, so I'm just going to outsource the whole thing. And at the middle of that is the content.
Right.
But you need to identify from that reason that content is valuable is because it is valuable to your customer. So if the content is not valuable to your customer because it's content that's, not well thought out, not well put together, then the whole thing is going to fall apart. It's not valuable to your customer. So it's not going to get visibility. It's not going to get engagement, not going to get traction. So you're doing everything else for nothing. So outsource the rest of it, all the moving parts around the content, even someone to, put it up on the tee for you, get it all ready to go.
Right.
And then that critical moment when it's time to
record,
hit the ball,
you're there.
You're the one.
I love it. This was awesome. I knew this is exactly what we've been chatting about. This is fantastic. Any final thoughts? A lot of redoing for you guys that are listening and watching.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like changing strategy.
It's not meant to be like a profound, episode of like, oh, wow, I never thought about that way. I mean, like I said, full disclosure, we create content for a lot of our clients. A lot of those clients, they've been clients for 10 years.
Because we went through the learning process of becoming their salespeople.
And that's the difficult part. And that's why we can confidently sit here and say it's not a good idea, because it might have took our employees 6 years or 5 years or 2 years, even 2 years, I think is too long for them to fully learn about, this custom fabrication process that they go through.
It's not the
tours of the facility. Exactly. I mean, we've done all of that, and it's a lot of work. And it also, we had to keep all of those employees for 10 years, right? What happens if that employee leaves? So
I agree.
It was a perfect storm for us. And I just know that for any other company to try to hit on all of those cylinders for that long of a period of time to learn that information, it's not possible. And even for us, it's difficult because every day we have a new company reaching out to us from a different industry. And so how can we possibly become experts in all those different industries, right? So we've developed a process to do exactly what we're talking about. Facilitate the whole thing, right? It's not any less valuable to our clients, it's actually more valuable because, again, that content is now going to have a bigger impact and a bigger reach. And we can spend more of our time all the time. We used to have to spend just researching and figuring out how to write this piece of content, or, you talked about a video or a podcast. I mean, it's nearly impossible to outsource that because someone needs to be the face of that company, right? So we've developed a system around the content creation to maximize each piece of content. And of course, we understand that everyone's time is valuable, but if this activity wasn't valuable, it wasn't scalable, then it wouldn't be a fair trade-off. But I think it's worth investing a certain percentage of your time to create that expert level, piece of content that then can be distributed, 10 times over.
And I think it's not just their product or services, it's the competitors. What are the alternatives? So that you can know about that. And what are the pros and cons of the alternatives? Now you're going into other things, and then you have to learn about the trends in the industry. Where is it going? So at this point, you might as well be an employee. Think about it, right? Like that's what people don't understand is that's how deep it has to be if you're going to be writing for an attorney or you're going to be writing for a particular client. We have clients that are extremely highly regulated. So now we don't have to learn the laws and the rules of the regulatory rules and the new rules that are coming out and then change everything based on that. That's what we're saying. It's not very easy to find a partner to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I honestly can't, the more that we talk about this, I can't think of an industry where it's like 100% safe to outsource your content, because if your industry is that simple to write about in the beginning, then it's going to be even harder to compete with, right? Because everyone can create content. So you have to even try harder to be something more valuable, something different than what your competition is doing. But you bring up great points about it's not just the product or service knowledge, it's industry, it's rules, regulations, laws, it's competitor, all of your competitors you need to understand. Then it's your customer. You need to understand your customer's job. You need to understand your customer's pain points, objections, all of those kind of things, right? So for you to say, hey, I'm going to teach that to someone else just so they can write, blog posts for me is ridiculous when every one of your sales people is capable, required to have all of that information or they won't be successful at their job. So it's just about understanding what needs to be done. Yeah. And then, like you said, prioritizing and repurposing that type of information.
Awesome episode. That was fire, dude. Hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of this. Obviously, this is meant to be informative and help you grow and scale your already working marketing campaigns that you're running. As always, if you have questions, reach out to us. Our website is oneims.com/podcast. We want to continue this dialogue. We want to have a conversation about what may be the challenges. I've heard time and time again how my marketing team couldn't get my content right. That should have been my podcast title. Why is it my marketing team can't get my content right? Their content is not what I'm looking for. Well, clearly we talk about this in this podcast as to why that is. So hopefully you got some value, and we will see you next time.
Growth Marketers is brought to you by OneIMS, helping you reach new heights through integrated marketing. One world, One Web, One IMS.